What's up guys, in this video I'm going to be telling you the Norse story of Baldur, going in depth on his journey in the Norse world, even post Ragnarok into the New World. Remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe, because the next video we are going to talk about some implications his real Norse story could have on the God of War sequel. Let's get right into it. Anger, hate, and power was not who Baldur was, nor did he share these qualities. In fact, it was the opposite. Baldur was something special to all the gods that roamed Asgard. Gods wanted to be him, the goddesses wanted to be with him. All in all realms loved Baldur, adored Baldur, and envied the very ground he walked on. But who is Baldur? Baldur was the god of light, joy, and purity. He was considered the most handsome, gracious, and cheerful among all the gods. He was the son of Odin and Freya. Being the son of Odin, he had many brothers and sisters, including Thor and Hadar. His wife's name is Nanna, who was an obscure, lesser-known goddess. Perhaps he chose not to marry a higher name because popularity doesn't come to his mind when he looks at people, and together they had a son. Although all in all realms loved him, there was one who opposed him, who hated him because of his own jealousy. That person who sits in darkness while Baldur basks in the light was a trickster god named Loki. Loki hated Baldur and all he stood for. I should be getting all that attention, he thought to himself. It should be me. Around this time, Odin had learned the 3 signs of Ragnarok. The prophets had foretold a day where the gods would fall in battle with the giants. Horrified, Odin learned the beginning of the signs of Ragnarok. The event that will start the chain is the death of his beloved son, Baldur. However, Odin thought to himself, no one would harm Baldur. Ragnarok won't come because he will never die. The gods lived on their lives, not thinking of the end of days. That peace was interrupted when Baldur had come to his mother and father with concern and fear. Baldur has had several dreams about his own death. He never remembers how he dies. He only knows he does die. This caused great concern to all of the gods. Odin and Freya put matters in their own hands. They need to make Baldur so safe that they would never have to worry about him again. But how? Freya came up with an idea. Freya set out from Asgard on her new quest. Her plan was to make sure Baldur was never able to be hurt again. She would find all objects in nature and ask them to never harm her son. She went to objects such as rocks, stones, to oak trees and steel, from the birds with the loudest songs to the insects with the quietest chirps. Ladybugs and cloth, she went to them all and they all agreed to never harm Baldur. After all, Freya was one of the greatest magic users of the 9 realms. She made Baldur unable to be harmed by any type of object. Satisfied with her work, she began her journey home. On the way, she spotted mistletoe. She hadn't made a pact with mistletoe. She thought if she should, but came to the conclusion that mistletoe was already too puny and weak to hurt him regardless. The exhausted Freya now continued towards Asgard, to her home, leaving the mistletoe behind. Upon arriving, Odin and Baldur greeted her at the gate. She told both of them of the good news. No object can hurt him, no sword or arrow. This made Baldur and Odin pleased. Smiling and laughing together, Baldur started to run off to inform all the other gods. Freya stopped him just before he left and told him the only object she didn't talk to was mistletoe, but it was too small to do anything regardless. He shrugged it off and ran to the other gods. While the other gods was experimenting with Baldur's invulnerability by throwing swords and spears at him, Loki watched from a distance. Angry and jealous, he swore to himself he will punish Baldur for the attention he was getting. He'll find his weakness. A couple of days later, while Baldur was finally alone, Loki disguised himself as one of his friends and approached the loved god, and asked him what was his weakness. Surely he wasn't immortal. Baldur said his only weakness was mistletoe. Balder did not fear any of his fellow gods would ever betray him, which is why he told the secret. Perhaps arrogance, ignorance, or just trusting his peers a little bit too much led him to leaking his own information. Whatever the reason Balder had, his negligence would be his downfall. Loki, now armed with knowledge of Balder's weakness, he went out in search of the ingredient. Finally, he came across some mistletoe. With a grin spreading to both his cheeks, he thought to himself, I know exactly what to do. He took the material and sharpened it, shaped it, and molded it. Out of his hard work, he made a very sharp arrowhead. Now, how do I make a spectacle out of all of this, he thought. And he thought of the most cruel plan. Racing back to Asgard, he found Balder there, surrounded by friends and family. Loki found Hadar, brother of Balder, who unlike the gods wasn't throwing spears or swords at the now invulnerable god. Loki asked him if he would like to join in on the fun. Hadar replied, I am blind, I cannot sadly, but the cheers and laughter of everyone else is enough for me. Loki then persuaded the blind god to try, and that Loki would guide him. It would make your brother very happy for you to participate in the action, Loki said. Hadar finally agreed. Loki put a bow and arrow in the blind god's hands and pointed it in the direction of Balder. Balder saw and smiled with grace, and held his arms wide open, inviting the arrow to come from his brother. Hadar, he's watching and waiting. Go on and do it. Hadar let go of the arrow and let it fly. Suddenly, a cry flung out. Balder had been pierced and died instantly. Hadar, scared and confused, he asked Loki what was happening and why was everybody yelling in fear. But Loki had long vanished the second Hadar let the arrow fly. Hadar had killed his brother. Balder lay dead, with the world and all of the realms crying, yelling, and mourning. His lifeless body lay next to Odin and his mother. Snow began to fall from the sky. The next day, the gods gathered and discussed reviving him. The world simply couldn't go on without his presence. The past day, everybody was mourning his loss. Tears could create an ocean. Somebody must go to Helheim and retrieve his soul and bring it back, Odin said. But who will do such a task? Hermod, one of Odin's many children, said he can, and he will bring Balder back for the sake of the 9 realms. Hermod rode down to the underworld. There he had a meeting with Hela. Next to her, in a chair of honor, there was Balder with a pale expression on his face. After a while of pleading and begging, she said she would only return him to the land of the living if everybody in the world wept for him. Hermod agreed, and he then set out on a long journey, getting testimonies from everybody. Everyone he talked to had wept for Balder. However, Hermod's journey will come to a striking end once entering a cave which housed the giant Pak. She told him she didn't mourn for Balder. In fact, she cursed him. And because she was the only living creature to do so, and the only living creature to not weep for Balder, her actions and words ultimately doomed Balder to staying in Helheim forever. And the world never knew that in fact the giant Pak was actually Loki in disguise. With Balder dead, the world plunged into chaos. Down the line, with Balder now dead, the gods and giants went to battle and fought to the death. Asgard was to be destroyed, leaving only ruins and grassland. The realms were burned down, the sky was dark, and in the darkness, the sun eventually rose. Flowers once again started to bloom. As the darkness retreated, the sons of Odin and Thor were the only gods left in this new world. One of the gods that were left was Balder, who stood in the center of his old home. The remaining gods started to find small chess pieces of figures of their previous lives in the grass. They found pieces of Odin, Thor, Freya, even Loki and his awful children. Balder found one of himself, laying on the ground. He kneeled down and picked it up. One of the remaining gods asked him why a piece of him was still there, even though he was no longer dead. Balder quietly replied, "This is a piece of me that is no longer me. This was a version of myself where I died long ago with everybody else. I am reborn. I am changed, and this is my rebirth. So that's gonna be it for this video. I appreciate you guys for watching. What are your thoughts on Baldur's Norse story? Since you made it this far, I highly recommend you subscribe and like the video, because I'll be posting more story videos just like this as we all wait for God of War sequel to be released. And do you think any implications of this story is going to be in God of War sequel? Do you think any parts of this story will be there? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm gonna be out of here. Thank you guys for listening. Deuces.